Hey guys, welcome back. It is definitely quarantine time. I'm stuck in my apartment. I've got college classes starting up online, I might add, which I'm really not looking forward to. I prefer to go see friends and classmates and go to class and get out and live life instead of being stuck in my apartment all day long. But at least I have room to set up a green screen in the living room and throw an airsoft gun up in front of a camera and talk about it. So today we're checking out the Amoeba AS-01. Fox Airsoft sent this over, and don't forget to check out their free gun giveaway. They've always got that going on, even during this wonderful pandemic quarantine garbage we've got going on right now. So go check that out. There's a link in the description down below. This is an unusual gun. I have mixed feelings about it. I love the externals. It's extremely comfortable. It's moderately ergonomic, and I love the look and feel. It's very Magpul-esque to me, and it's got a large enough capacity magazine where I really can't complain at all. The internals are a different matter, and some of the design choices I kind of question and wish they'd rethink a little bit. And of course, we're going to touch on all this as we go through this review, especially during the internal portion. So, before we talk about the gun anymore, I want to go over everything the gun comes with. The gun comes with a rather large magazine. You know, when you get L96s or VSRs, their mags are pretty small. They generally fit up inside the body itself. This one's meant to replicate a real magazine instead of just being something that kind of fixes to the body that you're not supposed to notice otherwise. It holds 50 rounds, which is definitely a plus. It's rather large. It is a big hunk of plastic, essentially. But you can get aftermarket ones of these. They're only 20 bucks a piece, so they're not terribly expensive and readily available. You also get a pretty reasonable manual. It's totally fold out. It's a really simple design. And it's got a complete blow up or breakdown of the gun. So if you need to maintenance or disassemble your gun or do any work to it, it's much easier with a blow up of the gun on your instruction manual. Your obligatory cleaning rod comes with almost every airsoft gun out there. And this is one of my favorite things about the gun, oddly enough, is the old style, like Marui style loading system for the magazine. It's like a plunger style. I remember when I got a really cheap $40 electric gun 13 years ago, it came with one of these for the 40 round magazine. And I love that these are included with this gun. The Ares AS-01 is definitely something that is physically unique. There's not another bolt action gun quite like it. It kind of looks like an M40, A3, or A5 a little bit with kind of some other elements mixed in. So it's a little bit different. It's not modeled after anything specific. It's just something that Ares did, and I rather like the design, actually. I'm going to start with the stock and move our way forward. The stock itself is solid. Obviously, the body is, for the most part, one piece. But the butt pad itself is absurdly squishy. The stock is so squishy, it feels like one of those stress relief balls you want to squeeze when you're at work and you've got an awful problem you can't solve. I love the feel. It's almost too squishy. I wish it were a little more firm, but what can you do? You've got a sling loop back here. It can actually be swapped to either side by popping out 2 Allen keys, so rather simple as well. One of the really neat features about this gun is there's a compartment hidden inside the grip itself. It's just going to slide down as a little notch you pull down on, and it does have 2 Allen keys that greatly assist in disassembling your airsoft gun. Operation of the gun is pretty straightforward, just like any other bolt action. You've got your kind of VSR-esque safe and fire. Safe is back, fire is forward, and it's got your F and S markings there. Bolt racking, bolting the gun, pretty straightforward, nothing unusual. Something I really do like though, there's actually a loaded chamber indicator on the left side of the gun. So when your bolt is racked, a little red notch pops out here, and you can actually tell that your gun is ready to fire and hot. The magazine insertion is pretty simple. Dropping it is just as easy. There's a little tab here, and I feel like half the time when I hit this tab, I actually hit my thumb with the extended portion here, and it's not the most comfortable, so I try to hit it with my index finger here. There is actually a portion right under the trigger guard where you can push it and pop your mag out. The rail on top gives you a reasonable amount of space for an optic. It could be a little bit longer, but this is kind of the normal length you get for most airsoft guns. The hop-up adjustment's just in front of that. It takes a little Allen key. It's really simple. Turn it right to adjust the hop-up more and left to decrease the hop-up. I love the look of the fluted barrel. Nice, heavy, rittered barrel. The metal on this, the whole gun is really, really solid. I love the finish on it. The only odd thing about the barrel actually is the muzzle. So it comes with a big plastic tip on here. Threading under it is a large thread. It's very specific to this gun. So if you want to put your standard suppressor on it, it's got a 14mm negative thread. You do have to get an adapter. There are also muzzle brakes and flash hiders that you can get aftermarket. I've seen a handful of those around that have the specific threading on here for this gun, but there's not too many of them. There really wasn't too much externally to cover about the gun, so let's go ahead and take it apart at the tech table and show you the internals. Admittedly, the Ares Striker AS-01 is a little bit different to open up. There's actually a bit more to it than, say, opening up a VSR-10 or an L96. It's just a very different design. So with everything open, we've got the cylinder assembly, the trigger box, which actually, for the most part, is part of the body, which is kind of unusual, and we'll talk about that here in a second, and the hop-up and barrel. The hop-up chamber itself on this gun is proprietary, even though it does take a VSR type bucking. So at least you can upgrade it still, but the chamber itself is plastic. It does have a flared well here, so you can actually hopefully get better feeding on the BBs. And you can see from the top here, this is where the grub screw fits in from the top of the receiver rail itself, and it'll actually press on an arm and push the hop-up downward. I do actually like the design of the hop-up chamber better than, say, a VSR chamber, at least the stock Marui design. Instead of having two halves that go together, it's just a top and a bottom, so it's much easier to fit this piece in here for the loading mechanism. The VSR type bucking in this gun is a little bit harder than I expected. Usually VSR designs come with a fairly soft bucking. I did like this one was a bit harder. You can take this off and you can see it's just a standard VSR type inner barrel as well. The inner barrel on this guy is brass, of course, and it is 550mm long. The nub on this gun is actually built into the hop-up arm, and it is flat and is rounded. It's not an H-nub or V-nub or NIM-nub, whatever you want to call it. It's just a flat arm that pushes against the bucking. The bolt itself is a good bit shorter than an L96 or a VSR-10 design, but it is about roughly the same width as a VSR, give or take. You do get quite a bit less air volume in here due to the lack of length. Disassembling is pretty simple. There are actually two holes in the cylinder head, but mine was already pretty loose, so I can just hand unscrew it there. And it's already got quite a bit of pressure coming out. The cylinder head doesn't have any kind of O-ring or anything on it. It's a straight screw in, and it does have a red rubber damper here. The piston comes out, just a one-piece aluminum piston. Works just fine with an O-ring, and it is ported on the top, so it's almost like an AEG piston head, more or less. The spring is fairly stiff. It feels like a 120 spring, give or take, and it's actually an AEG spring, believe it or not. So I can take another AEG spring, this for instance is from I think a KWA if I'm not mistaken, and drop it in here and it'll work just fine. And then the spring guide is metal, no bearings, doesn't actually lock into anything, it just sits right in the back of the cylinder itself. The trigger box has a lot of similarities and a lot of differences from other designs out there, such as, say, an L96 or VSR. It is, for the most part, integrated with the body of the gun, which it can be good, can be bad. I'm kind of on the fence about it. I wish it was a little more modular. I do like that idea a little bit more than just it being pretty built in like this. The idea is you take 3 screws out, and of course the safety screw, and lift this plate off. It is pretty hefty, thick metal, so I'm not really terribly concerned about it. But oddly enough, the trigger itself is plastic. I wish it came with a metal trigger, just me being a little picky, I suppose. But there is a lot of adjustability inside of the trigger box. You've got a trigger sear and our piston sear, which are pretty normal. The piston sear is spring-loaded and is pretty unadjustable, it looks like. The trigger sear has an adjustment screw under it, so you can actually adjust how far upward it is, so how quick of a trigger pull you have. And then the trigger itself has 2 adjustment screws here as well, one for how tough of a spring you want behind it and how far forward you want the trigger behind it there. So a surprising amount of adjustability, so 3 different screws to adjust your mechanics of your trigger box. The sears look to be decent quality. I've seen upgrades online, actually quite a few, that are a single sear that actually replace both of these as one unit. So definitely options out there to upgrade your sear set if you want to. If you didn't know or hadn't noticed, the piston sear on this gun is a 45-degree setup. Most upgrades out there will get to a 90-degree sear. So what are my thoughts on the gun? I like the externals. I actually really love the externals. It's a very solid feeling gun, and I just really can't have any complaints about it. It's actually a small complaint I just noticed here when I have my finger resting back the trigger guard. The little screw hole here, it's a little rough. You could probably just take a file to that, it's no big deal. But aside from that, The internals are where I kind of have some question about the gun. Obviously, I wish it had a little more air capacity for the cylinder. Some of the heavier ammo, I feel I could really use it. And especially the barrel length on top of that. You got a 550 mil barrel with a limited amount of air capacity in here. It shot fine for the 3.2s I ran for it. And obviously it's more of an upgrading platform than something you're probably going to use out of the box. Shoots about 400 FPS stock without any tuning or upgrades or anything like that, which is fine if you want to run it for like just a regular old field rifle where you're going to engage people 150 feet out. But if you really want to use this as a long range weapon, something you're going to shoot 300 feet with, like any other bolt action gun you can get to do pretty easily, you're going to want to do some work to it. Obviously, swap out the trigger sear, do some work on the hop-up and barrel. I do wish there was a metal option or a different upgrade option for the hop-up chamber, and as of yet, I haven't seen one, unfortunately. There are some upgrade parts I've noticed for the bolt assembly, spring guide, cylinder head, piston, things like that. Obviously, the spring is AEG compatible, so it's upgrades across the board for the internals if you really want to get the thing shooting as hot as other guns. But there's just not as many options as the VSR or the L96 platforms. You're paying a bit more for this than you would, say, most VSR or L96 platforms, but I think you're paying for the uniqueness of the gun. And that's the thing I appreciate about it the most. It's different, it's unique, and actually I love the OD green look with the kind of the black finish. It just works really well for me. So I'm gonna give this a 7 out of 10. I think some of the internals could use some revision. Some ideas could be changed, and definitely some things could be reworked to make this a better gun out of the box and a much better upgrade platform. It's already a solid setup as it is, and I know there are also newer versions like the AS-02 and things kind of in that realm. But I think this is still a contender in the field and something that's relevant today. Thanks for watching, guys. I'm Prodigy from Airsoft Team Kilo 23. Don't forget to go to foxairsoft.com and enter their free gun giveaway. There's, of course, a link in the description for that. That takes about 2 seconds to do it. Stay healthy, stay safe, don't go outside too much, and don't get this friggin' corona garbage that's going around. I'll catch you guys in the next review.